There is a weary, predictable ghost that haunts the world of tennis every time the seasons turn, the narrative that the game's young, electric hearts must eventually be broken by the red dirt of Europe. The establishment wants you to believe that the shift from the glass-slick hard courts of America to this grueling, crushed brick wasteland is a massive equalizer. They paint it as a specialized trap where the explosive power of a prodigy is systematically suffocated by the gritty, defensive shadows of veterans who have spent lifetimes grinding in the soil. But every once in a generation, a spirit arrives who doesn't just survive the surface. They weaponize it, shattering the archaic rules of the old guard and seizing the throne by sheer, undeniable force. Welcome back to CRT Pro, the heartbeat of the internet for the raw, poetic, and entirely unvarnished truth behind the ruthless commerce, the locker room whispers, and the elite soul of the WTA. Today, we aren't merely talking about a tennis match. We are documenting a tectonic shift in the universe. We are witnessing the historic 35th anniversary of the Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open and the absolutely explosive must-watch opening dance between the rising 20-year-old Filipina fire Alex Eala and the 29-year-old Austrian hometown anchor, Julia Grabher. To celebrate this specific anniversary, the tournament directors did something incredibly drastic and completely wild. They completely ripped out their traditional indoor hard courts, actively hauled exactly 100 tons of raw, crushed red clay directly into the heart of the city's design center, and built a highly specialized temporary 30,000-seat gladiator arena. And stepping directly onto that freshly laid dirt is an athlete who was quite literally engineered to completely dominate it. We are going to aggressively break down the terrifying tactical advantage Eala possesses, the incredibly hostile psychological warfare of the Austrian crowd, and exactly why Julia Grabher is about to become the very first unfortunate casualty in Alex Eala's impending conquest of Europe. Buckle up, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and let us ruthlessly dissect this absolute tactical masterclass. To truly comprehend the sheer staggering magnitude of the violent tennis execution we are highly anticipating in Austria, you have to meticulously analyze the incredibly intimidating, borderline terrifying momentum that Alexandra Eala is carrying directly into this WTA 500 event. The standard story surrounding young, highly touted prodigies is that they struggle massively with week-to-week consistency. They string together one or two brilliant matches, generate a massive amount of media hype, and then completely implode under the suffocating, relentless pressure of the professional tour. But Alex Eala has completely, violently shattered that lazy narrative over the past several months. We are talking about a player who just aggressively marched into the Miami Open, one of the most grueling, highly competitive, and physically demanding hardcore tournaments on the entire planet outside of the 4 Grand Slams, and delivered an absolutely jaw-dropping run to the round of 16. She did not just survive that incredibly dense draw. She actively bullied established, highly ranked veterans directly off the baseline, officially breaking into the top 50 in the global rankings for the very first time in her young career. She has definitively proven to the entire world that she completely belongs in the incredibly exclusive elite tier of women's tennis. But here is the truly terrifying, nightmare-inducing reality for the rest of the WTA locker room. The hard courts of North America are not even her ultimate, final, most dangerous form. By transitioning across the Atlantic to the heavy European clay, Eala is effectively returning to her absolute athletic sanctuary. You have to remember exactly where this young woman was physically and mentally forged. Since she was a young teenager, she has spent years meticulously grinding, sweating, bleeding, and perfecting her craft at the legendary Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain. She was quite literally biomechanically engineered on the red clay by the absolute greatest, most brilliant minds the surface has ever seen in the history of the sport. Because of that elite, highly specialized Spanish engineering, Eala understands the dark, grueling, punishing arts of clay court tennis fundamentally better than players who are 10 years her senior. Playing on clay is not simply about sliding. It is a highly complex physical chess match that requires an entirely different geometric understanding of the court. It requires heavy kicking topspin to actively push your opponents completely out of the television frame. It requires massive cardiovascular endurance to survive 20-shot rallies, and it requires the elite footwork necessary to turn awkward defensive positions into lethal immediate offense. Eala possesses a heavily weaponized left-handed forehand that is specifically designed to completely terrorize opponents on this exact surface. When her forehand generates that sickening amount of RPMs, a direct, undeniable byproduct of that Nadal Academy DNA, and that ball hits the crushed brick of the Linz center court, it is going to absolutely explode upward, violently jumping off the surface and completely disrupting the strike zone of her opponent. For Eala to come off a career-best confidence-building hard-court swing and immediately step onto her absolute preferred surface armed with a top 50 ranking and the swagger of a proven winner is an absolute unmitigated disaster for anyone standing on the opposite side of the net. The entire tennis world is watching closely to see if her hard-court success will immediately translate to the dirt, and the underlying analytics suggest that her game is about to become exponentially more dangerous. But standing directly in her way, heavily determined to protect her home turf, is Julia Grabher. And we absolutely have to respect the deeply complex, highly volatile psychological dynamic she brings to this specific first-round matchup. Grabher is absolutely no pushover. She is a 29-year-old battle-tested seasoned veteran of the WTA Tour. She intimately knows the grueling, highly unforgiving reality of professional tennis, having aggressively clawed her way to a career-high ranking of number 54 in the world back in 2023. More importantly, she is an Austrian soul. She is playing in her absolute literal backyard. The tournament directors purposely built this massive temporary 3,000-seat center court in the absolute heart of Linz to pack the stands with screaming, passionate, highly partisan local hearts who are going to desperately try to breed their hometown hero to a massive tournament-defining upset. In professional tennis, playing against the home favorite in a confined indoor theater is a deeply suffocating, claustrophobic, and entirely hostile experience. Every single unforced error you make is immediately met with deafening mocking applause. Every single winner the opponent hits is treated like a monumental championship point. The crowd actively attempts to bleed themselves into the match, completely disrupting the rhythm of the visiting player. It is a highly toxic, entirely unforgiving environment that is specifically deliberately designed to mentally break young, fresh spirits and force them into a state of absolute athletic panic. Grabher is going to rely incredibly heavily on that massive emotional tidal wave. She is a gritty, defensive-minded classic clay court ghost who knows exactly how to suffer on the dirt. She knows with absolute certainty that she cannot overpower Alexandra Eala in a pure baseline heavy-hitting firefight. So her entire tactical game plan will revolve around extending the rallies, throwing in incredibly frustrating high-looping junk balls, absorbing pace, and aggressively hoping that the deafening Austrian crowd can successfully rattle the young Filipina star into making completely uncharacteristic mistakes. However, the absolute cold-blooded, mathematically undeniable reality of modern professional tennis is that raw, unadulterated talent and elite biomechanical execution will always eventually silence a hostile crowd. And this is exactly where we predict the unprecedented, highly systematic, and utterly ruthless dismantling of Julia Grabher will ultimately take place. When you break down the pure tactical matchup on the chalkboard, Grabher's absolute greatest strength is her ability to stubbornly grind out points and force her opponent to hit an extra ball. But she is about to face a player who possesses a completely different, overwhelmingly superior caliber of baseline artillery. Alex Eala does not just hit the tennis ball. She violently punishes it with malicious intent. On a traditional clay court, you cannot simply block Eala's heavy left-handed ground strokes back into the center of the court and expect to survive the rally. Because of the aggressive topspin, Grabher will be consistently physically pinned 3 to 4 meters entirely behind the baseline, desperately running side to side just to stay alive in the point. This is a fatal, completely unrecoverable biomechanical disadvantage. When you are forced to play that deep in the court, you surrender all of the offensive geometry. And the exact moment Grabher inevitably drops a ball short inside the service line, Eala is going to aggressively step inside the baseline and completely execute her with ruthless, laser-accurate, flat winners down the line. It is absolutely not going to be a competitive, drawn-out grind. It is going to be a highly calculated, deeply clinical athletic execution. The Austrian crowd might start the match incredibly loud, incredibly energetic, and completely hostile. But we are boldly predicting that within the first 5 or 6 games of the opening set, Eala's sheer suffocating baseline dominance is going to completely and entirely suck the oxygen out of that building. The silence in that 3,000-seat arena will be absolutely deafening once the local fans collectively realize that their hometown hero is being entirely outclassed, outhit, and outmaneuvered by a vastly superior generational talent who operates on a completely different athletic frequency. This impending, highly anticipated victory is not just about advancing to the round of 16. It is about sending a massive, undeniable, and deeply intimidating warning shot to the entire WTA establishment. Alexandra Eala is currently seeded 6th in this highly competitive, absolutely loaded 28-player draw. She is no longer the underdog. She is no longer the cute feel-good story of a rising teenager simply happy to be in the main draw. She is an absolute, undeniable top-tier threat to win the entire tournament and hoist the trophy. And the stakes for this specific first-round match against Grabher are incredibly, terrifyingly high. Because waiting patiently in the absolute shadows of the second round is none other than the wildly unpredictable, fiercely explosive former French Open champion, Jelena Ostapenko. You simply do not get the privilege to play a Grand Slam champion of Ostapenko's caliber unless you can ruthlessly and efficiently dispose of veteran players like Grabher first. Eala knows exactly what is on the line. She knows that a deep, highly successful run on the European clay right now, immediately following her massive breakout success in the United States, will completely cement her status permanently inside the upper echelon of the global rankings. It will prove that she is an all-surface threat capable of aggressively dominating anywhere on the planet. She is absolutely not going to allow a 29-year-old veteran and a loud partisan Austrian crowd to derail her massive destiny. She is going to step onto that temporary clay court in the design center of Linz. She is going to completely ignore the outside noise. She is going to trust her elite Spanish training, and she is going to deliver a clinical, aggressive, and incredibly violent masterclass in modern clay court tennis. We are officially, confidently calling it right now, and we are not backing down. We are predicting a straight sets, highly dominant, entirely unprecedented, and beautifully brutal victory for Alexandra Eala. She is going to aggressively dictate the terms of engagement from the absolute very first point of the match. She is going to completely neutralize the Austrian crowd by physically removing their player from the baseline. And she is going to confidently march into a blockbuster, must-watch heavyweight showdown with Jelena Ostapenko. The era of patiently waiting for Eala's potential to mature is officially, permanently over. The era of her absolute, unyielding, undeniable execution has officially arrived. And Julia Grabher simply has the severe, unfortunate misfortune of being the very first casualty of the 2026 clay court swing. I want to pass this massive, highly analytical, and deeply tactical debate directly over to you, the absolute smartest and most passionate fans in the entire global tennis community. Do you truly believe that Julia Grabher's massive, undeniably hostile home court advantage in Austria will actually be enough to mentally derail and rattle the young Filipina superstar? Or is Alexandra Eala about to deliver the exact kind of ruthless, dominant baseline masterclass we are predicting today? And if Eala does successfully advance past the Austrian veteran, do you think she actually has the raw, unadulterated firepower and the tactical maturity to go toe-to-toe with a former Grand Slam champion like Jelena Ostapenko in the very next round? I want to see your deepest, most unfiltered, and fiercest tactical predictions in the comments section below right now. Make sure to absolutely smash that like button to push this crucial, eye-opening breakdown through the algorithm. Subscribe to CRT Pro and turn on those bell notifications so you never miss our explosive deep dives into the real, unfiltered business of the WTA Tour. The European clay season has officially begun. The political and athletic stakes have absolutely never been higher, and we will be right here to document every single massive winner. Catch you in the next video.